Hey everyone, it's Brennan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to rank all of the books that I read in July. So when I do my wrap-ups, I usually just try to go in chronological order that I read the books, but I thought this month, why not go through all of these books and put them in order from my least favorite to my most favorite and talk about them that way. It's not groundbreaking, it's not super innovative, but for this channel, it's new, and that's what we're going to do today. I read 16 books in July, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever read that many books in 1 month. And I'm going to rank 15 of them. I'm going to go ahead and get the one nonfiction that I read out of the way, just because it's hard to rank different genres, let alone different like fiction and nonfiction. They just like don't compare to me. So I read The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. The subtitle of it is Embrace Discomfort to Reclaim Your Wild, Happy, Healthy Self. And this is just like a self-improvement book. Our author, Michael Easter, is a journalist, and I think he had some alcoholism problems in his early adulthood, and he just goes through different ways to put yourself out of your comfort zone, and he relates all of this back to a hunting trip that he takes in Alaska, and it's just really good. I mean, I gave it 5 stars. It's a great nonfiction, general self-improvement health type book. But now let's get into the ranks that I'm going to give the 15 other books that I read last month. We're going to start at the bottom, the worst books that I read, and go to the top, the best books. And this month was super interesting because I actually have a variety of stars, from 1 star, which I've never ever given a book before, but I did last month. Super exciting. From 1 star all the way to 5 star. I have 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. We are covering the whole spectrum of stars in this video. And the worst book that I read in July was this super cute cover, The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. I actually read this in a vlog that I'll link below, but this was just really not good. I gave it 1 star. I don't really know what I was expecting. Actually, I do know what I was expecting. A cute historical romance fun time book, and I think this book tried to be a fun time, but it just was so over the top ridiculous. The Lady Scoundrels are like this society of pirates, but they don't have ships, they fly their houses. So it's like magical realism, but they're comically not good at flying their houses. They tip around a lot, whatever. And our love interest for our main character, who is a 19-year-old pirate in training, her love interest, he's kind of weirdly traditional, but also not. It was just really hard. It's this book is trying to mesh contemporary feminism with Victorian era historical and bridging them together with pirates who fly houses, and it just did not do it for me. I did not have a fun time. I hate read this book, and like I said, I have a vlog if you want to hear more of my thoughts in that. I described them much more eloquently there. So that was the very first 1-star book I've ever read in my reading career. The next book on this list I gave 2 stars, and that was Hairpin Bridge by Taylor Adams. This is a new release from this author. He wrote No Exit last year, which I enjoyed a lot, definitely a lot more than this book, even though this book is kind of set up in the same style, an isolated setting. Our whole story happens in the span of a few hours. Same as No Exit, but this book was just fast-paced yet really slow. I didn't like the perspectives in it, so I guess I could tell you what it's about. We are following a twin sister, and her twin has committed suicide, but she doesn't think it was a suicide. She jumped off this bridge, but she thinks that a cop in the area had something to do with it. So she goes to Montana, where this bridge is, and confronts the cop. And basically this whole book takes place over an afternoon, maybe 2 or 3 hours of them having a standoff together, and we get some weird kind of fake flashbacks. It's our main character is trying to write a blog post that incorporates the story of her sister, so that's our different perspective, but it was not natural to me. It just didn't really flow well, and then I just felt it would always be oh, but then that was a lie, oh, but then that wasn't true, and then I'm well, then I just don't even want to read this if none of it's true, or is it true? I don't know. It was just didn't do it for me. I didn't really like the story, I didn't like our characters, and I didn't like our points of view. So yeah, 2 stars. I also have a vlog where I read this book also. I'll link it down below. Okay, now we're getting into the 3-star books. I have 3 3-star books, and the first one I'm going to put on this list, aka the worst 3-star book I read, was Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This is the first Katie Robert book that I read. I'm still super interested in reading her like Disney fairy tale retelling series. I don't really know what that's called, but Neon Gods is kind of like, it's a dark romance and it's like an Olympus setting, but it's also like in the real world. So that was my thing with this, was like the relationship was fine. It's a Hades and Persephone retelling, but I never felt grounded in our society. It's like, imagine a political society, but some of the political heads are like elected, but then some are like monarchical. Like the Zeus character in this world is like succeeded by his sons, but then other characters like Demeter are elected, and I just never really felt grounded. So it's like in America, but it's like not. Like how I imagine this is like if you have America and you just put like walls around a city and that city just does its own thing, but then it still makes references to the outside world. That was my thing with this. I just never really felt like I had a grasp on the society, which was a big part of this. Like this is going to be a series and there's like political power plays. So the thing is that Persephone's mom, Demeter, wants her to marry Zeus so they can form like a political alliance. But Persephone does not want to marry Zeus because he keeps killing his Heras. So she runs off and she runs across the bridge. It has a name that I can't think of. The bridge in Greek mythology that goes to the underworld. And she gets grasped up. No. And then she kind of takes up with Hades, and the like romance in this is super dark, as in like they like to like display themselves and do like voyeurism type things in the underworld. So that was super dark. Also, I listened to the audiobook for this and I didn't like the narrators. Like, okay, the narrators themselves were fine, but when they would, there's a female and a male narrator, but when they would voice each other during their chapters, I really hated it. Like our female narrator, when she voiced Hades in her chapters, he just sounded like Batman, and it really pulled me out of the story a lot. That being said, I still gave it 3 stars. Like I would be interested in continuing with this series. The Hades and Persephone story, I believe, comes to a close, so I don't really know what the rest of the series is going to be like. I'd be interested in it. I enjoyed the book, but I didn't like the setting, and I just felt like really removed from it. There's my review on that. The next 3-star book I'll talk about is Confessions by Kanae Minato. This is a Japanese thriller, and it was really very interesting and a very quick read, but the tone of it just like didn't do it for me. So the plot is that there is this like middle school teacher. I think she teaches 8th grade or 7th grade, 7th or 8th grade. She's a middle school teacher, and her young daughter gets killed, and everyone in the community thinks that she drowned. But her mom, our teacher, knows that 2 of her students had something to do with her daughter's death. So it's like the end of school, and this teacher is like addressing her class, telling them this drawn out kind of story about her daughter's death and that she knows 2 of them were involved in it. And she kind of outs them. I mean, like her class knows who she's talking about, but she doesn't like come out and say their names. But she identifies them enough to where the rest of their school year and into the next year of their schooling is very awkward for them. Obviously, like one of them does not come back to school, and then the other gets bullied in their class, and it's a story of that. And then there's like kind of a domino effect of just lots of other things happening in their school and in the personal lives of these students. And I don't know if this is all Japanese thrillers, but this is just told in such a way that it's like so mundane. Like it is told in this mundane emotion, but like crazy things will be happening. Like how this teacher leaves her class is crazy. Kind of trigger warnings for the weaponization of a disease. It's interesting, but like the feel of it was just a little off to me. So 3 stars. It was interesting. I would still recommend it if you're interested in this niche genre of Japanese thrillers. Japanese thrillers. And the last / best 3-star book I'll talk about is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I would say 3 stars is disappointing for this book just because I've read other Riley Sager's book like Lock Every Door and his camp thriller The Last Time I Lied, and I really enjoyed them. But Survive the Night is set in the 90s. That's very important because throughout the first part of this book, I kind of kept forgetting it was set in the 90s, and I was constantly like, why doesn't she just text her boyfriend? But then I was like, okay, it's like 1991, I get it, okay. But this is following a girl, she's a college student, and there's a serial killer on their college campus, and he kills her roommate and best friend. And then our main character is like, all right, I've got to go home for the semester. I don't even think I can come back to college. I have to get out of here right now. So she like posts on this bulletin board to get a ride home because she won't wait like 3 days for her boyfriend to drive her home. So she ends up getting a ride with a stranger, essentially. And this book takes place over their car trip home to her home. And she starts to think that the guy driving her is the serial killer. I think he's called the campus killer. That's super original. And this book follows that. But the interesting part of this, but also the part that I didn't really love, is that our main character has this condition or disorder that makes her see things that aren't really happening. It's like she spins her own realities that's like just centered in reality enough that she questions if it's real or not. And she calls them her movies. And she's super into movies, and there are a lot of movie references. There are also a lot of Nirvana references in this. But I didn't like that as a plot device. I was like, well, that's super convenient for you writing a thriller that your main character like literally imagines things that aren't there. I don't know. I didn't love that part about it, and I just never like felt excited while I was reading this. Like, I thought the reveals and plot twists were interesting, but it just never made me like super excited and like on the edge of my seat like a thriller usually does for me. So 3 stars. It was fun, but not my favorite, especially not my favorite from Riley Sager. Okay, let's get into the 4-star books. I have 4 of them. No, 5. I have 5. I have 5 4-star books to talk about. So these books were really good and I enjoyed them a lot, but my least favorite 4-star book was This Is How You Lose the Time Warp by Amal El-Motar. And this is a super short, the audiobook was like 4 hours, 4 hours. This is a super short science fiction, and it's following 2 perspectives, red and blue. Those are their perspectives. And it's like they are time traveling, and they kind of like leave calling cards to each other like in different time eras, and it's kind of like they're from 2 different planets, but they're practicing on Earth. So it's like 2 competing planets, but they're carrying out all of their activities on Earth, and these 2 beings are falling in love but also trying to kill each other. And it's like their story, and they like leave things as letters to each other, and it was really super interesting and I enjoyed it a lot. It's a super quick read, and I don't really know what else to say about it. Like, it's straightforward yet also like really not, and makes you think a lot. And I really enjoyed this, and I would read it again. Would recommend if you're looking for a really quick science fiction. The next 4-star book I'll talk about is A House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Malerman. This is another short horror thriller, kind of sci-fi-esque book. Josh Malerman also wrote Bird Box, if you are interested in that tidbit. I just know that's super popular, but I haven't read it or completely watched it either. Anyway, House at the Bottom of the Lake follows this like teenage couple. I think they have like just graduated high school, and they like meet at a hardware store, and then they like go on a date. They're on this lake canoeing, and they find a house at the bottom of it. Pretty self-explanatory, but then they start diving and checking out the house, and it has like some very horror-esque things about it, and also some very like physics defying, like gravity defying and not natural things inside this house at the bottom of a lake. And this is a story of them exploring that and also kind of developing a relationship together. But mainly it's just weird. This is just a weird horror, really good for summer book. I don't really want to say that much else about it. I really liked like the very last couple sentences of this book, and for a thriller and a horror book, that's super important to me. If it leaves off and I'm not feeling it, really affects my stars. So I enjoyed this. It was a quick read, really good for summer. Like I said, give it a go if you're interested in the genre. The next 4-star book I read was The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. I really liked, I loved the first part of this book was like 5 stars for me, but the last part of it was more like 3 stars. So that's how we got our 4 stars. This is like a patient case study, which I love. I work in healthcare. I read a lot of patient charts, and this is like diving into a super intriguing psychiatric patient chart. So the patient he's probably like in his 30s now, but he has been committed to this psychiatric hospital since he was 6 years old. So we get a new psychiatrist who comes to the hospital, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna try to cure this patient. He's been here for 30 years, but you know me, I can do this, I've got this. So he dives into this patient's chart, this patient's history, and the thing with this patient is that when people get around him, they go crazy. And it's just super interesting. I don't want to get too much into it, but like if you like a good juicy medical story, I would pick this book up. The first part of it I loved. I wish it would have stayed more on the medical side and less on the horror surrealism side, but it was a really good book. Another short book. These horror books are just like really short, and yeah, I would pick it up. I enjoyed it, had a great time, read it in like a day and a half. The next 4-star book I read was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. I really loved this book. Okay, and I say it like that because when I looked at it on Goodreads, all of my friends who had read it had given it like 2 stars, and I was like, is there something wrong with me? Because I almost want to give this book 5 stars. I didn't give it 5 stars. I should tell you what it's about first. Obviously, I didn't give it 5 stars. 4 stars. Let me tell you what it's about. So this is a thriller with a few different perspectives. I guess our pinnacle perspective is from this girl. Her name is Libby, and she has turned 25, I believe, and she has inherited a house. She was adopted, and it is her biological parents who left her the house, and this house has a really dark history. So basically her family parents died in what is believed to be like a suicide pact, like they were a cult, and some of the members decided to kill themselves, but they left this baby that gets found and adopted out. But we have a couple different perspectives also, but you don't really know who they are until the end of the book, which I really enjoyed. So we have a perspective from a girl named Lucy. She is like in her 40s now, and she is in France. She is homeless. She's trying to raise her 2 kids while being homeless, but she's also trying to get back to this house now that it has been inherited by the baby from that family. And then one of our other perspectives is a time jump perspective from Henry, who was one of the children in this family. And I think their cult was going on in like the 80s to 90s, like 1980 to 1990 or something like that. So we're getting a perspective from how their cult, okay, they never call it a cult, but that's what it is, but how this family turned into this very dark, very backward society just within this house. And I think probably what misses the mark for some people is that this is more of just a story and not really a thriller. And it's definitely marketed as a thriller, but it was more just an interesting story to me. There was never any like current danger that I really felt. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I just thought this was a super interesting story. I was like gripped by it. I was like wanting to know what happened to this family, how they got to where they are now. So I think if you're just looking for a thrilling story without high stakes, I would pick this up. It was really good and I enjoyed it. All right, the last and best 4-star book that I read was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I've heard such lackluster reviews on this book, but I really, really enjoyed it. This is a sapphic romance, but it has a magical realism time travel element. So our main characters are August and Jane. Jane is a current day contemporary girl living in New York, and she meets Jane on the subway, but she comes to learn that Jane is actually from the 1970s and she has been stuck on the subway for the last 45 years or so. And this follows their relationship, them forming their relationship, but August also trying to help Jane get off the train, like solve whatever has gotten her stuck on here, and just diving into Jane's past, and the only reason that I didn't give this 5 stars was that there was a lot going on in this book, like a lot of different plots. So August has this super interesting background where her uncle has been missing for the last several decades. He's like a cold case, and her mom is super fixated on it, like it has molded August into who she is today. So she's good at snooping around and crime solving, I guess that's what I'll call it. But she also like is tired of it defining her. And also August starts working at a pancake house that starts to close, and we're trying to save the pancake house, and we save the pancake house by doing a lot of drag show stuff, and there's just like a lot of different plots, but all of our characters in this are so good. August moves into this apartment with a lot of different really eccentric, really interesting and unique roommates, and I loved learning about them. I would read books about them. I really enjoyed this. If you're looking for a fun, cute, sapphic romance, this is kind of chunky, but it was really good, and I would recommend it for sure. Okay, we are now getting into the 5-star books, and I have 5 of them to talk about. I have 5 5-star books to talk about with you. So at the bottom of my 5 stars is Just Last Night by, I believe it's Viri McFarlane. It starts with an M, but I think it makes a V sound. I'm not sure. Please correct me. Please like let me know when I'm making mistakes on things in these videos. But this is it's an adult romance, but it's heavy. If you're looking for a steamy romance, this is not it. This is like a heavy, sad romance. You know what I'm talking about. But this is following a girl. Her name is Eve. She's like a goth emo girl, and I just like love that. She's like in her 30s, but she has kept up with her goth emo vibe from her, you know, millennial childhood. I love it. I love that. I thought that was so unique in this book. Anyway, that's like super side point. But she's had this super close friend group for a long time, the last like 20 years or so of her life. And then her friend group has to deal with a huge tragedy. And also she has been secretly, yet not so secretly, in love with one of the guys in her friend group, and nothing has just like ever panned out, and he's had a really long-term girlfriend for a long time now anyway. So there's like some tension in their friend group a little bit, but you know, they make it work. Anyway, their friend group deals with a big tragedy, and then this book is our main character Eve coping with that tragedy and also developing a relationship with someone. And I don't want to say anything else about this because I was almost about to DNF this book. Like I was like, is this really where this book is gonna go? Like, I don't think I like this. I'm not interested. But then around probably the 40-45% mark, when my slow brain finally picked up on what was going to happen, I was like, ooh, I can be here for this. I like this. And I enjoyed this book. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. It was kind of like I was enjoying it, but then I was so relieved that it went where I wanted it to go that I gave it 5 stars. So that's kind of why it's like at the bottom of my 5 stars. But again, if you're looking for a heavier romance, I would pick this up. The next 5-star book I will talk about is The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. This is a super popular thriller. I feel like I'm the last person to read it. But the premise of this is that we have a man. He just found out that his wife is cheating on him. He's on a plane. He meets this girl on the plane, and they just kind of start a conversation, and she's like, you know, I can help you kill your wife if you want me to. And he's like, huh, interesting. So they kind of start forming a plot to kill his wife. And then I don't want to say anything else. That's the thing with thrillers. Like, I want to give you like the gist of it, but I do not want to risk spoiling anything. This has a perfect twist around the 50% mark, and I love that in a thriller. That's why I like Gone Girl so much. But this is a 5-star thriller for me. I don't want to say anything else. We have a few different perspectives in this, and they kind of jump around, and there's a couple timelines that we kind of get stories from, and it's just really good. That may not have convinced you to read this, but I'm telling you, if you're interested in a thriller, you should pick it up. The next 5-star book is a historical romance. It is The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie by Jennifer Ashley. And this is like English, but also Scottish. So Ian Mackenzie is a Scottish fellow. And he's from a big family. His older brother is like the laird of their clan. This is actually kind of post-clan era for the Scottish area. I am not a historical expert, but this is like Victorian era, I do believe, now at this time. So like 1880s, late 1800s. or so. Anyway, we have a marriage of convenience in this. So our female character is a widow, and she has inherited a lot of money from this lady who she was working for, who then passed away. But she's a widow, and she's a hot commodity because she's got some money, and this guy in society is trying to marry her. But then Ian McKenzie comes along, and he's like, that guy's a piece of garbage. You shouldn't marry him. You should marry me instead. So what I'm going to point out is that Ian McKenzie likely has autism or is somewhere on the autism spectrum. So his family had him institutionalized. He has trouble making eye contact. He has a lot of trouble following like the social pleasantries and niceties of the day, especially for a powerful family like his. So his dad had him institutionalized, and then when his dad died, his brother got him out of the asylum where he was. So he's got some trauma from that for sure. But he just loves our main character. And okay, I won't say that. He actually thinks that he cannot feel this sensation of love. But obviously our main character is going to change that up. But they do have a marriage of convenience, which is a trope, especially in historicals, that I love. It's just so much fun. But yeah, like we just follow their relationship. But also there are like some old murders that get brought up in this. And then there's a detective who like hates the McKenzie family, and he's kind of out to get them and wants to prove that they committed these murders. And it's just a great time. It's a great historical time. Like, you know, pick it up if you're interested in a historical, and if you like autism representation in your books. I really enjoyed that aspect of this. Ian was just so different from everyone else, but he was also like, touch my girl and I'll kill you. I just love that, you know? Okay, we are down to my last two 5-star books. Second place is gonna go to It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This was a super highly anticipated new romance release for me. I love Tessa Bailey. Her books are just so funny and they're so steamy, and you know I loved her Hot and Hammered series. So this is a Schitt's Creek inspired romance. I have not watched Schitt's Creek, but we are following Piper. She is like an LA socialite. Her job basically is Instagram and being famous, and she kind of like pushes the limit a little too far, and her stepdad is like, Piper, you're, you know, in your later 20s now, you need to grow up. I'm gonna send you off. I'm gonna cut your money off. You're gonna go back to the town where she kind of started. So her dad was actually a fisherman in this Seattle area port town, and he died. That's not funny. I just laugh when I'm uncomfortable. So her dad very tragically died when Piper was a baby, and then her mom moved to LA. But Piper is not used to roughing it like she's being asked to do here, but her sister gets to go with her also. So there's like some great sister dynamic here. And she meets Brendan, who is a grumpy fisherman, and he's like, this girl is not, I keep wanting to say Port Jefferson, but that's not the town. That's her town in her Hot and Hammered series. But Brendan is like, this girl doesn't belong here. She's never gonna make it. Obviously, she weasels her way into his grumpy heart with her sunshine. But Piper just learns so much more about herself and like what she actually wants to do. And what I loved in this book is that Piper and Brendan did not change each other, but they actively enjoyed the way each other is already, and then they just grew into even better people. I loved this, but I will say I'll be on Amanda's channel. I'll link her channel below, Ginger Snapped Reads, with her and Kirsten this Thursday talking about this book for their Sugar and Spice book club. Super excited to talk about this book. It's just so good. I don't have that much more to say, but you know, it's just a fun time, and there's so many like heartwarming characters in this, and it's just so funny. And I feel like Tessa Bailey does a great job building up the characters in her communities and like making the towns be these people. Does that make sense? That's how I feel. Okay, so the best book that I read in July, I have not talked about this anywhere, but it was Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. So Melissa Broder kind of reminds me of Sally Rooney a little bit if you've read Normal People or Conversations with Friends. But just in that, her characters have some personal problems. So in Milk Fed, we are following a girl who is dealing with anorexia. She has an eating disorder, anorexia nervosa. She has an eating disorder, and if that triggers you, maybe don't read this book, or just know that going into it, because she is like super fixated on her food. So she knows this is an issue and she's like kind of trying to do something about it, but also not. But she's also like a stand-up comedian and she works for this entertainment industry business. So she's just like doing her normal office stuff, but it's like told in this super interesting psychological way that's like boring, but also fascinating. Do you know what I'm talking about when I describe a book like that? It's like boring, but riveting. I love that in books. And so the thing with our main character is that she's like falling in love with this Jewish girl who works at a frozen yogurt store. Bear with me, like I know that sounds weird, but I just love to hear our characters' thoughts on just general things that are happening in their lives. And that's what this book is about. I don't know what else to say. I really enjoyed it. And if you've read it, let me know because I would love to talk about it. But yeah, Milk Fed, best book I read in July. Obviously gonna be a top fave for the year. Don't really know what else to say about it, but if you've read The Pisces by Melissa Broder, you can like kind of feel what I'm meaning when I say these things. But anyway, you all, thank you for watching. Let me know what the best book you read in July was. Let me know if you read any of these books. I would love to know. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next one.